we're going through it right now in the US and of course many other places in the world, but we are going through it. There is a lot of disappointment and a lot of frustration. And I know that there are a wide batch of people who are in the make space, people who make things, who create things, that find themselves distraught because of the immediate effects that we're seeing already as of November 26th, 2024, today's date. It's crazy to me how much of a drop-off there has been in the people who do support artists. And obviously the people who are well established are probably doing okay. And I would also wonder if maybe they're seeing a drop off as well too. But for anybody who's just now getting started and focused on kind of building up that repertoire of your portfolio and everything else that you want to do and showcase as an artist, I think it's really, really difficult right now. It's really challenging to reach people who have an interest in supporting you as an artist. That's buying your artwork, that's engaging with your content, that's finding ways to be a part of the journey of making something and somebody being able to enjoy that thing. I'm very sad, but I'm also really angry, and I'm in the process right now of transferring that anger into action. So believing that there's a wonderful shot that we have at continuing to improve the world around us, at finding a way to have a better system that more accurately reflects the people's interest, the working class's interest. This is way more political than I would ever have expected for these videos to be, but I think it's absolutely critical to talk about it because it's so relevant to my personal life, and I know to so many other people's lives as well too. When we set out to face a challenge, the amount of courage that is necessary in order to face that challenge varies to some degree, but in most cases it requires quite a bit. It requires you looking at your inner critic and all the other critics of everything else that's going on and deciding, you know what, regardless of how small a chance I have at succeeding this challenge, I'm going to step up and give it a shot. And there might be a lot of risk involved with that. There might be, sacrifice of free time is guaranteed for sure, but then going beyond just the free time component, you might be risking your financial status, you might be risking part of your career in taking that courage and doing something differently than what you might otherwise do. You might try to find a space where you want to just curl up in a ball, capitulate, call it a lost cause, and move on. It's incredible to me within my personal family just how much of a division there has been over the last 2 years. It's incredible to me how many of the older adults in my family structure that have folded to the pressure of what I believe to be outside influence into the way that we engage with social media and the way that we engage with media in general here in the US. We had a huge target painted on our backs. We are also super ripe for people finding their own silo of what they wanted to believe and then following through that. I had an experience just earlier this evening where I realized there are some features within most social media platforms that allow you to go out and explore other posts, other sources of content than you would normally see in your main feed. And I would argue there's got to be like a very small fraction of people who actually go out and do that, myself included, up until tonight, where I didn't spend any time beyond the space of what was on my home feed. I would just scroll through everything that was in my home feed served to me. That's the algorithm in action, right? It's going to serve you the content that you already agree with and then continue to serve more and more. So the message is twofold here. There's one about like encouraging you as a viewer to source your content, to source your perspectives from as many places as possible, to do it in a way where you're actually going out and proactively seeking additional perspectives. And that requires, this is the second part of the point, it requires courage to go do that. The video that I'm tying this into is a piece of talking about the importance of courage and how critical it is to challenge yourself to do something different than what you've done before, to get outside of your silo, to get outside of what you normally have been connected to, and see if there are perspectives that you don't agree with, and see if there are reasons why there might be legitimacy to those arguments that you don't agree with. And it was so alarming to so many of us that were in silos. I'm still in many social media silos right now, but trying to enter into other spaces as much as possible to see other people's perspectives. But it was alarming to us to see the results of the most recent election here in the US and to know that, oh my gosh, what I believed was going to happen is not going to happen. And it's so different from the reality that I so strongly believed in and felt was totally real. It's a flag to those of us who are in those spaces, and it's been a flag to other people in those spaces even in 2020 and 2016 as well too, that if we depend on what is most readily available to us, that is, if we don't use courage to step out and see more of the world from more sources, we're not going to see the truth. I think art and creativity has an incredible capability to warm your mind, to open your mind to doing those things. Because as a maker, if you try to make things completely on your own, you'll get really frustrated really quickly. There are people out there that can overcome that completely on their own, but most of us get really frustrated and then choose to stop making, choose to stop doing that hobby, that thing that we were doing. If you get past that, if you take the courage to go out and seek out the consultation of other people who have done it before, or other people who are in similar spaces, you are most of the time rewarded with new consultations that impact your ability to create and improve your actual net products that you are making. So that's good. That's a good thing. That's one of the most critical components to making things, is this expansion of your space and this expansion of what you want to experience. I noted in the last video how important it is to me that I see more people create things. I think I am distraught as a person that we aren't better collectively as a species, that we spend so much time focusing on being a spectator instead of being a real active participator in experiencing life. And there's varying degrees of the ways that you can participate in life. You can be the spectator that adds the comment. That's a little step up. But if you're the spectator, and I do think that that's the foundation to being a maker, is starting as a spectator, doing a little bit of engagement, commenting. And I think the next steps are to apply what you've learned. Maybe that's through writing, maybe that's through creating music, maybe that's through doing artwork. But that's what puts you on the field, is as soon as you make that step to like, okay, now I'm going to make something based on what I've learned, based on what I've seen, based on what I've heard. And as you enter into that space, there's additional things that you have to do as a creator and as a maker so that you preserve your own emotional well-being and also the well-being of the people around you. But in general, just that first step of getting into the world of making, it's depressing how many people go about their entire lives without having consistent periods where they've adopted a hobby and made something, created something. And I do think that is, I noted this on the first video, one of the biggest reasons why there's so much pain in the world in general is that you have so many people focused on the spectator sport and not enough people getting out onto the field and doing it themselves. So courage has this capacity to be a driving force to making that step to get out onto the field, to start making things. But it's also a net result of doing that repeatedly. In many ways, what drives courage and like the generation of courage and your ability to feel courage is hunger, wanting to change something, wanting to make a difference. There's a lot of people who have not come to terms whether or not they want to do those things. And maybe it's not even about whether or not they want to do those things. Maybe it's more about that they just don't know if they can do something about it, that they don't trust themselves. If your belief that you can't change something is stronger than your hunger to change that thing, then you won't. Then you won't make. Then you won't create. You won't get out on that field and start playing ball. And that's depressing. That's depressing. It starts in childhood. So one of the benefits of having been an art educator is, you go through the college program and you learn about like what are the reasons why kids stop creating, what are the things that they face as challenges. And it's usually because the parents are afraid of their child choosing a career path that will not be financially rewarding, that won't provide them continuity of their lives. And some of that's a legitimate fear, but I think one of the missing components behind this, like, challenge that most kids face is that art doesn't have to be the profession. Art can be the empowerment of other professions. There are a wide swath of engineers and lawyers and doctors that have had a background in the arts, that have learned to create and to make things, and it has catapulted, it has completely shifted their capacity to perform beyond their peers because they've got those basic understandings of facing their own fears and making something and feeling like they can continue to move on and on and on, because in many ways, consistently making something, music, writing, paintings, is more challenging than our day-to-day careers. Most of our day-to-day careers involve a lot of like following a standard operating principle, following a process, following this set best practice, engaging with people, being a good communicator. Those things are challenging in their own right. But boy, oh boy, consistently creating paintings, consistently creating music, consistently creating woodworking, any of those things, especially when there's not like a monetary reward that's immediate. That's one of the ways that work is, a career is easier, is that you do get a guaranteed payout when you work for a company. Entrepreneurs, business owners exist in a slightly different space than this, but when you're creating something completely on your own, or even with a team, and there's not a buyer on day one, it's really tough to have that courage to move forward and to do something about it, to make something consistently. So yeah, courage, very important. What is the driving purpose of courage? To help us expand our sense of connectivity to the world, and what drives courage, our want, our hunger to change something about the world. This time in history, 2024, there is no greater urge that I feel than now to double down and to continue to create. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to go out and like be punitive about other people's perspectives. It means that in resilience to all of the challenges that we're feeling right now, this is my opportunity to completely illustrate the benefits of creativity through this. What comes from all of those consistent pieces of me creating art, of this video, anything like this, who knows? There's not a specific end goal in mind other than seeing more people get into the practice of making things, seeing more people open their minds and be willing to entertain perspectives that are outside of the normal silo of content. There's a lot of people that'll probably believe that their silo is not a silo, but I know that it's exhausting to try to exit your silo. I know that it requires dedicated time to go out and seek out those perspectives. What was really surprising to me over the last 3 months is that I had family members who straight told me, when historically for the last 18, 20 years that I've been having more heated political discussions with family members and friends, is that they were willing to talk, they were willing to hear. And what shifted in the last 3 months is they weren't. That they explicitly told me, you're not going to say anything that's going to change my mind. Many of those conversations weren't built around this like hope that, oh, maybe I'm going to change their mind. Many of them were like, let's explore together, let's look at some data, let's look here on our phones and see if we can find some evidence to support some of these claims. So yeah, now's a really good time for people to be creating, for people to be making, for people to be consistently back on the field, and to stop being spectators and to stop just being the commenter and to actually get out and play ball, create, make. So thank you for those of you who have tuned in, and I look forward to continuing this series into the next component of discussions. I hope you have a wonderful day and keep making.